Good morning, friends. In this video, we'll discuss about various incidental proceedings before the civil court. CPC in its orders 26, order 39, order 40, appointment of commissioner, granting of injunctions, arrest and attachment before judgment, order 38, and appointment of receivers, order 40, deal with several incidental proceedings. So first one is appointment of commissioner. Whenever the court feels it necessary to make a local investigation or to find out about the existence of any fact alleged by one party and denied by the other, the court can take assistance of commissioners. Normally in suits for injunctions or suits relating to mandatory injunctions, for example, a person alleges that there exists some pathway or cart tract which is essential or necessary for exercising his right of easement, or with regard to any existence of any landmark or nature of the property, and for ascertaining the mean profits, they may allege something, and if it is denied by the other, to appreciate the true facts, the court may not be in a position, the judge may not be in a position to go and inspect the spot personally. Unlike in CRPC, there is a provision which allows the judge to go and inspect the scene of offence. So I suppose it is under 310 of Criminal Procedure Code. In civil cases, since in view of various pendency of cases, various nature of the cases, variety of the cases, the judge would take the assistance of commissioners. Normally, the judge would appoint advocate as commissioners, and whenever an application is filed, the judge appoints a commissioner, directs him to do certain work as mentioned in the warrant, and asking him to submit his report after execution of the commissioner work. So all this procedure is mentioned in section 75 to 78 and also order 26 of CPC. So commissioners can be appointed to examine any person, to make local investigation, to examine or adjust accounts, or to make partition, to hold a scientific, technical or expert investigation, to conduct sale of property which is having tendency of speedy and natural decay, and for all these purposes the commissioners can be appointed by invoking various rules under order 26. So sometimes commissioners may be appointed to examine the witnesses, to record the cross-examination under order 18, and they can inspect the lands, and the important thing is they can do partitions as ordered by the court. They can divide the property by considering all the facts, and they would submit the report. Whenever a commissioner is appointed, the commissioner visits the place in the presence of the parties. He issues notice and take their work memos from them, and executes his warrant. And when he submits the report of the commissioner can be received as evidence in a suit. That's what order 26 says. Commissioner cannot be appointed for collection of evidence. This is a very important thing. Commissioner can do the commission work, observe and submit his report with his observations, and he cannot be appointed for collection of evidence. That means if in a suit for injunction, if a party files an application for appointment of commissioner asking the court to issue warrant to the commissioner to note down physical features, it is okay, but they cannot ask the commissioner to find out who is in possession of the property. So commissioner cannot collect the evidence. Collecting of evidence is only the task of the judge. He can give finding, but commissioner cannot give a finding with regard to possession and everything. Just he has to observe the physical features and he has to report back to the court, and the court would be in a position to take decision even after taking objections from the affected parties. So commissioner cannot be appointed for the purpose of collecting evidence. And some judgments are there to the effect that even though commissioner cannot be appointed for the purpose of collection evidence, there is no absolute bar, and in required cases where identity of the property is in dispute, boundaries are in dispute, existence and location of the property in dispute, commissioner can be appointed. The intention of the code is to put an end to the litigation, to do justice to the parties by receiving as much as evidence available and as much as the tools it can use. Therefore, there is no absolute bar to appoint commissioners in perpetual injunction suits, but commissioner cannot collect evidence. That is the idea. Whenever commissioner is appointed and he suppose commissioner submits his report suggesting his opinion and collecting evidence, the court can take out that portion of the report, kept aside that portion of the report, and can rely the other material, other portion of the report of the commissioner to decide the dispute. There is a judgment of His Lordship Justice Shivashankar Rao with regard to appointment of commissioner in injunction suits also, and one judgment of Supreme Court, State Haryana Work Board versus State of Haryana, the 2008 judgment. It is also very useful, where the apex court laid down a ratio to the effect that commissioners can be appointed for the purpose of noting down the physical features whenever required. So this is one concept. And powers of the commissioner. Rule 16 laid down powers of the commissioner. Whenever an advocate commissioner is appointed by the civil court, he can examine the parties, he can call for the documents, he can enter upon any land or building for the purpose of executing the warrant of the commissioner. So these are the powers of the commissioner. Sometimes commissioners can be appointed for examining the experts, and expert report can be sought by virtue of invoking Order 26 Rule 10A. So these are the important provisions in Order 26. This is one of the incidental proceeding. Then arrest and attachment before judgment. Another incidental proceeding is provided in Order 38 Rules 1 to 4, speaks about arrest of the judgment debtor or the defendant, and he cannot be called before the judgment as judgment debtor, defendant. And Order 38 Rule 5 to Rule 13 provides for attachment before judgment. So if the for example, a person wants to file a suit against a defendant for recovery of money, and the necessity requires the defendant is about to leave the local limits of the court. He is a habitual borrower and he wants to try to avoid the process of the court. He wants to leave the local limits of the country or that particular court. Then, having noticed that fact, the plaintiff can approach the court stating that he is having passport or he is making efforts to leave the abscond from the local limits of the court, and in such an event, even if the decree is passed against the defendant, he would not be in a position to enjoy the decree. By mentioning all these facts in the affidavit, if the plaintiff satisfies that the defendant is about to abscond from the local limits, then the court can pass an order for arrest of the defendant before judgment itself. Ordering arrest, that itself doesn't mean that immediately bringing the defendant to the court and sending him to the prison. The court orders the defendant to furnish security to the equivalent to the suit amount, so that the plaintiff will be protected from his debt, or the liability of the defendant will be enforced easily in the event of passing judgment and decree in favor of the plaintiff. Therefore, upon his failure to furnish the security, then he can be arrested and he can be sent to civil prison. This is mentioned in Order 38 Rules 1 to 4, and small cause courts cannot pass an order for arrest, as you know. and the person, the judgment debtor or the defendant can furnish security for his presence or for the satisfaction of the decree. Upon furnishing his security and satisfaction, the order of arrest will be removed. Then attachment. This is also one of the incidental proceeding under Article 38, Rule 5, and this is also very important because a suit for recovery of money or some liability of the defendant is there, and the defendant with a view to defraud and delay the plaintiff and to defeat his rights in execution of a decree, trying to sell away the property owned by him and to see that plaintiff may not be in a position to enjoy the fruits of the decree. Then there is a remedy for the plaintiff to obtain the orders of attachment of the property of the defendant so that he can easily execute the decree in the event it is passed in future days. Then attachment, what is required is satisfaction of the court. The provision says, Rule 5 says, satisfaction of the court to the effect that to obstruct or delay the execution of any decree that may be passed against him, the defendant is about to dispose of the whole or part of his property, then he will be asked to furnish security. And upon his failure to furnish the security within the time mentioned by the court, usually 48 hours, the property of the defendant will be attached. That means a court bailiff, court employee would go to the property and affix some attachment order over the property and publishes by way of what is that proclamation in that particular area, warning, cautioning general public not to deal with the property since it is under attachment. Because if any alienation is made against the attachment during the pendency of the attachment, it is void according to section 62 of CPC. And one benefit in taking the order of attachment is, if you take the order of attachment before the judgment under Order 38 Rule 5, you need not take the order again during the course of execution. You can straight away ask the court for selling the property in the event of the judgment debtor defendant or judgment debtor fails to pay the decretal amount. So this is one of the benefit. Once the property attached, it is also like a conditional attachment. The court asks the defendant to furnish security equivalent to the suit amount. Then upon failure of the defendant within 48 hours, the property will be attached. From that day onwards, the defendant is barred from dealing with the property. He cannot mortgage it, he cannot sell it, and he cannot alienate the property since it is under attachment. So when the attachment is removed, whenever the defendant furnishes any security equivalent to the suit amount, or if the suit is dismissed for default, the attachment will be raised. There will be no attachment. This is mentioned in Rule 9. And whenever a suit is dismissed for default because of the default of the plaintiff, and if there is any attachment, the attachment automatically goes. And after a period of some time, the plaintiff comes with an application for restoration and the suit is restored. Then the question is whether the attachment which has been raised because of the dismiss for default would automatically revive. The Rule 11A2 says it shall not revive automatically. The logic behind is that once the suit is dismissed for default, the attachment is raised. And after attachment is raised, the defendant sold the property to some other person. Therefore, without notice to that person, if the suit is restored, then it would cause prejudice to the rights of the third parties who purchased the property on the notion that the attachment is not there. Therefore, if the suit is restored, even though the suit is restored, the earlier attachment order which has been seized from the date of dismissal of default shall not be revived automatically. That is what mentioned in Rule 11A2 of Order 38. Then friends, once attachment is there, it need not be reattached under at the time of execution. It is mentioned under Rule 11, and Rule 12 says agriculture produce is outside the purview of Order 38. So agriculture produce cannot be considered as a property for the purpose of Order 38 Rule 5. It cannot be attached. Similarly, small cause court cannot attach immovable property. So these are the provisions, important provisions under Order 38. Then another incidental proceeding is injunction, Order 39. The substantive law for injunctions is mentioned in Specific Relief Act 36 to 42, and 36 speaks about various varieties of injunction, perpetual, temporary, and 37 speaks about temporary injunction, 38 speaks about perpetual injunction, 39 speaks about mandatory injunction, Specific Relief Act. And 37 of Specific Relief Acts provides and gives a right to a party to seek for temporary injunction at any time of the suit for particular period or till the orders of final disposal of the suit, and at any stage of the suit an application can be filed. That is a right given by the substantive law, and it says the procedure to be followed is mentioned in Order 39 CPC. So substantive law is provided under Specific Relief Act for temporary injunction, perpetual injunction, and the procedure for granting temporary injunction is provided under Order 39. I will give you some illustrations. Temporary injunction can be obtained in any suit and at any stage. A sister filed a suit for partition against her brothers, claiming her share in the property, and her brothers wants to alienate the property, and there is a threat for her. Her brothers may dispose of the property during the pendency of the case. 52 is there, and it would come to a rescue, 52 of Transfer of Property Act, and it is a tedious task. Once the property is sold, the third parties would enter into the picture, and they may claim that they are the bona fide purchasers. And to avoid all those complications, the party who is filing the partition suit, the sister who is filing the partition suit, can ask the court, can ask the relief of temporary injunction, debarring her brothers from alienating the property in any manner. This is also by way of temporary injunction. Temporary injunction in a suit for partition. Interlocutory application for temporary injunction. Then in a suit for injunction, perpetual injunction, suit will be filed for perpetual injunction, but the defendants are such that they are having muzzle power or some influence, therefore they may come to the property at any time, and they may disposes the plaintiff from the property at any point of time. There is an imminent threat of danger to the possession of the plaintiff over the property. Then the plaintiff can file an application for temporary injunction because they are committing an act which is against to the contrary to the rights of the plaintiff. Therefore, they can ask for temporary injunction application at the interlocutory stage by invoking Order 39 CPC. And another application, another suit for specific performance, the defendant who entered into an agreement of sale with the plaintiff and now is trying to sell away the property. Then in such an event also, the plaintiff prior agreement holder can file an application for temporary injunction restraining the defendant from alienating the property in favor of third parties. So these are various types of temporary injunctions, like in regard to copyrights, bank guarantees, and all those suits relating to those suits. Temporary injunction application can be filed. Even it can be filed at the appellate stage also. Then Order 39 mentions about the grounds. It says, Rule 1 says, whenever any property is under danger, is under damage, or property of being danger, the wording used is like that, like this. where in any suit it is proved by affidavit or otherwise that any property in dispute in a suit is in danger of being wasted, damaged, or alienated by any party to the suit, or wrongfully sold in execution of a decree, or the defendant threatens, intends to remove or dispose of his property with a view to defrauding his creditor, that the defendant threatens to dispossess the plaintiff or otherwise cause injury to the plaintiff in relation to any property in dispute in suit, the court may order grant of temporary injunction to restrain such act or make such other order for the purpose of staying and preventing the wasting, damaging, alienation, sale, removal or disposition of the property or dispossession of the plaintiff, or otherwise causing injury to the plaintiff in relation to any property in dispute in the suit as the court fit until the disposal of the suit or until further orders. So, rule 1 is very important, friends. Under what circumstances temporary injunction can be granted and how it can be granted and what is the mode of proof required. It says by way of affidavit or otherwise. You mention the facts in the affidavit clearly, how the threat is occurring to you, how the damage is going to take place, how you are having a prima facie case, and how your rights will be injured and which cannot be repaid at a subsequent period of time if the temporary injunction is granted, and you have to mention that the balance of convenience is in your favor. So these are the three ingredients: prima facie case, balance of convenience, and irreparable injury must exist for granting of temporary injunction. So as I stated, prima facie case, by seeing the documents and averments made in the plaint and affidavit, if the court satisfies that there exists a prima facie case against the defendant, then the court can grant temporary injunction. And if the court feels that if not granting of injunction, the injury occurs to the rights of the plaintiff cannot be repaired at a subsequent point of time by awarding compensation, then it has to grant temporary injunction. And the third thing is balance of convenience. In fact, it is balance of inconvenience if granting of injunction doesn't harm to the rights of the defendant, and when it is compared to the harm caused to the plaintiff because of non-granting of it. Therefore, the court assessing the balance can grant temporary injunction. And the procedure is provided in the rule 2 to 3, 2, 4 up to 10 onwards. Rule 2A speaks about breach of order of injunction can be complained by filing an application under Rule 2A. And Rule 3 is important: notice to opposite party must. And Rule 3 says the normal rule is court shall issue notice to the party before granting temporary injunction. And the court also says that the court has to mention reasons before dispensing the notice. Urgent notice is a general rule, but if the conditions are there and some urgent relief is required, the court can also dispense with the issuance of notice to the other party, since the other party, if once receives the notice, may gain time by way of filing on the pretext of filing counter, and meanwhile he may dispossess and he may cause injury to the rights of the plaintiff. Therefore, the court can also dispense the notice and grant temporary injunction on the same day. And if it is granted like that, on the same day, the court has to direct the petitioner plaintiff to send all the copies of documents and plaint along with petition to the respondent defendant, and whenever there are many, to all of them by way of registered post within a period of 24 hours of granting of injunction. This is what we call as compliance. Whenever the party obtains injunction, he has to send all the documents to the respondent defendant and to file an affidavit to that effect in the court within 24 hours of granting temporary injunction. This is to see that the respondent should be in a position to know that why the temporary injunction has been granted, dispensing the notice to him. He must be given an opportunity to know the facts and also the documents filed by the plaintiff immediately, so that he would be in a position to file counter and see the injunction, if granted irregularly, can be vacated. So this is compliance affidavit. And Rule 3A, Order 39, Rule 3, capital A says it has to be whenever temporary injunction is granted dispensing the notice, that has to be disposed of within a period of 30 days. However, that can be extended upon sufficient reason shown by the judge. And Rule 4 also empowers the court whenever any temporary injunction granted, it can be varied, discharged or set aside under Rule 4. And one more important rule is Rule 10, and the court can also direct the parties to the proceedings upon the application of any party to deposit the money into the court. For example, there is a crop existing on the property, and the court can direct that the crop can be harvested, it can be sold, and the money can be deposited in the court by virtue of Order 39, Rule 10. So these are the important provisions under Order 39. Then another incidental proceeding is appointment of receiver, Order 40. So whenever a suit for partition or a suit for or a petition for insolvency has been filed, or some partnership suit for rendition of accounts is filed, in case of huge number of properties are there, the court can exercise its power under Order 40 and appoint a receiver to take management of the property and administer the property and account for the income derived out of the property to the court, so that it will be distributed and it will be given to the party depending on the ultimate result of the suit. So there are certain guidelines given under Order 41, Rules 1 to 5. Rule 1 says receiver can be appointed before or after the decree, remove any person from possession of or custody of the property receiver is having power, commit the same to the possession, custody or management of the receiver, confer powers on the receiver. So this can be done by the court under Rule 1. And there are certain guidelines given in one judgment of Madras High Court in Krishnaswamy versus Thangavelu. 5 rules, they are still holds good. The court has to appoint receiver with utmost caution only upon fulfillment of 5 conditions and upon just and convenient reason. So the appointment of receiver is a purely discretion of the court, and there should be a prima facie case in favor of the applicant and excellent chance of success. Emergency or danger or loss demanding immediate action and right of plaintiff must be reasonably clear and free from doubt. Then only the court would appoint receiver. Order not to dispossess the defendant. Merely because an application has been filed by the plaintiff for appointment of the receiver, it cannot be allowed to dispossess the defendant and commit the property to the custody of the receiver. All the conditions must be established, and conduct of the applicant should be free from blame. That means he must be vigilant, and the immediate necessity of appointment of receiver should be there. Then only receiver can be appointed. These guidelines have been mentioned in Krishnaswamy versus Thangavelu, AIR 1955 Madras 430. And another judgment is also there, CH Rajamma versus PV Reddy 1993 2 ALT 154 Division Bench. It says collector can also be appointed as receiver in some cases where land revenue payable to government is involved. So district collector can also be appointed as receiver. So friends, these are the various incidental proceedings wherein the court can exercise these powers during the pendency of a suit or trial upon the application, interlocutory application of the parties. So while drafting an application for invoking any of these rules, one should keep in mind that what are the requirements the code says, and whether your case, your application fit into the rules. You have to mention the circumstances why you are filing that application. You have to mention all these details in the affidavit, so that the court would be in a position to appreciate the reason mentioned by you in the affidavit and would allow or dismiss the application. If you won't mention, you simply file an application affidavit along with petition stating that you file so and so state and appoint the commissioner, or grant the temporary injunction, or appoint a receiver, or grant attachment order. Then how the court would come to a conclusion that that is required actually in your case. Therefore, if you won't say anything, the court would not be in a position to appreciate the reason and may not give proper relief to your client, then again you have to carry the matter to High Court by way of filing civil division petition. So it is an unnecessary exercise. Therefore, once you want to invoke any provision in the Code of Civil Procedure Code, please go to that provision, please read the provision, and there will be some reasons suitable to your case. Therefore, mention all those reasons and invoke the provisions and avoid delay, and so that you can do justice to your client. So friends, these are the several incidental proceedings, and in the next video we discuss about the procedure for different varieties of suits against government, minors, persons of unsound mind, suits by indigent persons, mortgage suits, and there are supplemental proceedings are there, and other miscellaneous provisions. Thank you.